Alright, hello everyone. My name is Srafi and I'm happy to meet you all, and today we're going to be talking about Jhin, the Mastermind. The last video was too long, so I decided to cut it in half. Alright, so I'm sure that Jhin is what everyone's excited for because Akshan is boring. So, Jhin is coming to the patch on Wednesday. This is very exciting, and I love this character, and I want to talk about him as much as possible. His existing starting deck is not changing, so let's go over these cards real quick. Jhin is a 4-mana 4/4 with attack, deal 2 to all stunned enemies. He levels up if you played 12 fast spells, slow spells, or skills. And once he levels up, he becomes... I think he's the only champion that doesn't gain stats when he levels up. I think he stays at 4/4. But he gains quick attack. And when he attacks, he deals 4 damage to the enemy nexus and all stunned enemies. That's perfectly fine, and his origin is the Virtuoso, and how an origin works is if Jhin is in your starting deck, then an effect activates. And for this effect, it is every 3 times that you play a fast spell, a slow spell, or a skill, if Jhin is in your hand or on the field, then you cast a Lotus Trap. And Lotus Trap is deal 1 damage to the enemy nexus, and then if Jhin is on your board, stun the weakest enemy. So essentially, it's like you're setting the stage for Jhin to take the stage. While Jhin is in your hand, you play a bunch of spells and skills, you poke the enemy nexus a little bit, and you get Jhin closer to leveling up. Then Jhin comes out on the stage, and he starts setting Lotus Traps, and every time he sets a Lotus Trap, he follows up with the Stun Blast that stops the opponent. If you've ever played League, Lotus Trap is his E, and it does do a little bit of damage, and it does slow the enemy. But what really matters is if Jhin can hit his W, and if he hits his W, then on a unit that has this, like a Lotus Trap, then it stuns them in place for a moment. So that's what that's about. Okay. Other cards. Thermogenic Beam. 0 mana to play, spend all your mana, deal that much damage to a unit. This has Health Potion, which is when you cast it, you heal your Nexus equal to the cost. So if you have 6 mana left, you play this card, you will spend 6 mana, you will deal 6 damage, and you will heal for 6. This is not good. I never play this card. Next up, we have Crackshot Corsair. 1 mana, 1/1. When allies attack, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. That is a skill. So, it's a 1 mana, 1/1. Whenever a unit attacks while Crackshot Corsair is on the board, it does not have to be Crackshot Corsair attacking. You play a skill that deals 1 damage to the enemy nexus. And Crackshot Corsair has Steel Shield, which is dumb. This is a 1-drop with Steel Shield, which, if you don't know, Steel Shield is an item that gives you +1/+3. And then she also has Philosopher's Stone. So when she's summoned, you draw 1. So 1 mana, 2/4, draw a card, and then when you attack with her, she deals 1 to the enemy nexus, and then she grows by 1 because of Jin's 2-star, becomes a 3/5. Absolutely crazy. There is not a 1-drop in the entire game that is better than this. Not even MF, and MF has Yip's Genius to give all of her 1-drops +2/+2. I love this card. And we're back. Okay. Much easier for me to explain Jhin when he's actually here. Okay. So, Jin's starting deck. Thermogenic Beam, Health Potion. Crackshot Corsair, Savage Shield, and Philosopher's Stone. 2/4, draw a card. When you attack, +1/+1. Boom Crew Rookie. 2 mana with Pickaxe. 2 mana 3/3 with Quick Attack. Okay. I forgot the pickaxe, the speed drops completely. So it's 2 mana 3/3. It does have Quick Attack. So if you attack and you get blocked by a unit that has 3 or less health, you'll slay it immediately. And it has attack, deal 2 to the enemy nexus. That is a skill, so it triggers the Lotus Traps and it triggers Jhin. Next up, we have Ever-Roasted Marksman. This is a 2 mana 3/1 that has play, deal 1 to an enemy, which does trigger, that is a skill, so it does trigger the Lotus Trap as well as give the Ever-Roasted Marksman +1/+1. Mystic Shot, 2 mana, deal 2 to anything, Hextech Fabricator 1. Grant your strongest ally a random common item in this game. Common items can be things like Regeneration or Overwhelm or I think +2. Not too many good common items, but it's still useful. The Sage Hand. So the Sage Hand is a 2 mana 4/2. She has a skill where she stuns an enemy when she's summoned, and she has Challenger from her Skirmisher Saber, but she has Ephemeral, so she will die at the end of the round. So when you play her, you are definitely trying to set up the stun as important as possible, and then you are also going to immediately use her, sacrifice her to kill something, because she's going to die if you do nothing with her. Next up, we have Mana Soul Student. Mana Soul Student is a 3-mana 3/2. Each round, the first time you play a fast spell, slow spell, or skill, I play Magic Embers. Magic Embers is an elemental skill that deals 1 damage to the enemy nexus. He gets Giant's Belt, so he's a 3-mana 3/4. And lastly, we have Yone. Yone is a 4-mana 6/6, a 6-mana 6/6 with Nomad's Medallion, which makes it a 4-mana 6/6. Play stun 2 enemies, skill that stuns 2 enemies. Cool. Alright, so that's really, really good. So, essentially, all of your characters, I think every one of them has a skill, don't they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, every one of Jhin's units has a skill. So they all advance him skills. And then all of them, he has an effect. His 2-star is whenever an ally gains... His 2-star is called Setting the Stage, +1 starting mana. When an ally plays a skill, grant them +1/+1. So every time that you trigger a skill, the unit that triggers the skill gets +1/+1. That includes for Jhin, which is really, really good. All right. So let's talk about his star powers real quick. If you've never played Jhin before, his star power is called Beauty and Death. For every 4th fast spell, slow spell, or skill you play, create a captive audience in hand. Captive Audience is a 2-mana spell that allows you to either stun a unit or deal 3 damage to it. And when you have Beauty and Death 2, which is his 3-star, the captive audiences that you create cost 0. Captive Audience is a fast spell, which means that it does stack up Jhin's level up and give you more Lotus Traps. So it creates a never-ending cycle. It is really, really easy to constantly juggle Jhin's removal to stun the entire enemy board, which I think is why they went so hard on trying to make Jhin good, because I think they knew that Jhin's base kit was so elegantly designed that if they gave him just a little bit more power, he would be one of the best champions in the game. And I feel like this is another swing. I feel like Jhin is going to be really, really stupid. Jhin's 4-drop is Explosive Finale. When an enemy dies outside of combat, deal 4 damage to the enemy nexus. This is literally Jhin. I know that this skill has been in the game for a while, but this icon is the icon for Jhin's skill when he is leveled up. It is a reference to his ultimate in League, and it does 4 damage, which is clearly a reference to Jhin. So yeah, that's just this is the only one that they could have given him, and it's fantastic. Mana flow, Jhin starting at 3 mana is not going to change a whole lot. It does mean that Jhin will come down a turn faster, which is huge. But other than that, I feel like your turn 1 is still probably going to be Crackshot Corsair, and then I guess now you can play Boom Crew Rookie if you have it. Otherwise, you'll probably just bank the 2 mana and use it on your next turn. Lastly, Jhin's 6-star. Death in 4 acts. Your skills and your spells deal 2 extra damage. Stunned enemies take quadruple damage from all sources. That is so incredibly powerful. So, the main thing to think about when you think about Death in 4 acts is that the Lotus Trap itself is insane. You get Lotus Traps like 2 or 3 times a turn. And Lotus Trap is literally just, it's a skill that does 1 damage to the enemy nexus, and then if Jhin is on the board, it stuns an enemy. That's the point of it. It's mostly meant to just level Jhin up. But when you have Death in 4 acts, that 1 damage to the enemy nexus becomes 3 damage to the enemy nexus. Now you are killing your opponent 3 times as fast. That is really, really powerful. Then, let's talk about the quadruple damage to enemies. One of the problems that Jhin has had with the nightmare areas is that enemies are really high stats, and Jhin's Beauty and Death gives him 3 damage. That's it. So a lot of times what Jhin would have to do is he would have to stun an enemy with the first captive audience, and then he just kind of use his other captive audiences to chip away at them. Now you don't have to do that. So you get a captive audience. It does 5 damage. If they can't kill the enemy, your first captive audience stuns the enemy. Your second captive audience deals 5 damage. But because the enemy is stunned, that is quadrupled. So instead of dealing 5 damage, you deal 20 damage because you set it up with 1 captive audience first. That's dumb. That is going to make controlling the board against deadly enemies very, very easy. Jhin with 6 stars will easily crush any 6.5 star nightmare. This is not going to be even close. I do think Swain is stronger, absolutely. I think that Swain will have an easier time dealing with 6 enemies. Now, granted, there aren't a lot of times when you have to worry about 6 enemies. It is true that even in a nightmare area, you're usually only dealing with 3 or 4 enemies at a time, especially if you're controlling the board. But the 6-star, and like when you have 6 enemies on the board, you have to deal with them. So there's just no way around that. So, and Elise is the thing. Elise is a very dangerous boss. She does flood the board very quickly. She does have 6 enemies on the board on turn 1 very quickly. So I do think that Swain having better AoE does make him a little bit better than Jhin, but I think Jhin will be a very, very strong second place for the most powerful champion in the game that is not Aurelion Sol. Aurelion Sol is obviously the most powerful. And I don't say that lightly. I like Fiddlesticks. I like Victor. I think Jhin is better than both of them, which is shocking to me that they could have done that. But this really gets me excited for what they can do, because they really kept, you know, his first 3 stars, and they just built on them so perfectly. And Jhin, like the real thing about Jin's kit is that Jin's starter deck is really, really good. They should definitely take a look at some of the other characters' starter decks and kind of adjust them, because Jin's is perfect, and if they made the other decks like a little bit better, like I know that you have to have a 1-drop in every starter deck because you need to be able to level the character when it's level 1. But with Jhin, they were just like, okay, well, we're gonna make this 1-drop like one of his best cards by giving it an absurd amount of stats. So yeah, this is just perfect. Jin's relic is Whisper. Power, your skills deal 1 extra damage per stun enemy. So let's talk about this. If your opponent has 6 enemies and you stun all of them, then you go into battle and you attack with Jhin, and Jin's leveled up, obviously. He's going to cast his Explosive Finale. He's going to deal 4 damage to the enemy nexus, and then 4 damage to all the opponent's enemies. Whisper doesn't really matter unless you have the 6-star. If you don't have the 6-star, it's going to take that 4 damage. It's going to make it 10 damage. Is the difference between 4 and 10 that big of a deal? Not really. Most enemies that would have died to 10 damage will probably die to 4 damage anyway. What gets really interesting is if you have a 6-star as well, because then you have 2 extra damage. So you start with 6 instead of 4. And then also your opponents take quadruple damage if they are stunned. So if you have, if you attack with Jhin when your opponent has 6 stun enemies and you have Whisper, your skill is going to deal 12 damage to the enemy nexus, because it's going to deal 6 plus 6. Then it will deal 12 damage to all of the enemies, but since they're stunned, they will take 4 times as much damage, which means that you're going to deal 48 damage to each enemy. And since you have Explosive Finale, each enemy is going to immediately deal 4 damage to the enemy nexus, so that will deal an additional 24 damage, meaning that you'll deal 36 damage. Then Jhin himself will actually strike, which will be minimum 4 damage, probably much higher because he has his 2-star power, but probably, you know, usually Jin's going to be like a 12-12 by the time he attacks. So that's about 50 damage. Is that good? Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't think it's good enough, though. The main problem with Whisper is that it interferes with Jin's other relics. Jin's base design is Gatebreaker, which is when I'm summoned, strike the enemy nexus, which basically just triggers damage. And then his other 2 are Cannon Barrage, which is when I'm summoned, if you have Plunder, which is you've dealt damage to the nexus this turn, play Cannon Barrages equal to my cost. So Cannon Barrage is a skill that deals 2 damage to a unit or 1 damage to the enemy nexus if there is no unit. And so Jhin is a 4-cost card, so you play 4 Cannon Barrages, and that's a skill. So you have 4 different instances of Cannon Barrage. Then, since you've cast 3 skills, you get a little Lotus Trap in there. Then, since you have 2 of the battery, you do it 4 more times, and then you plop another Lotus Trap in there. So that is 9 skills, which means that you are almost certainly going to be, first of all, you're probably going to level Jhin up. Not always. Depends on how fast you play him, and now that we're going to play him on turn 2, it's less likely. But you will get Jhin very close to leveling up. And then more importantly, Jhin is going to get +9/+9 because you're triggering 9 skills with Jhin. and his 2-star gives him +1/+1 for every skill that he triggers. So he's really, really powerful. You're dealing 3 damage to the Nexus because the Gatebreaker does reduce his attack by 1 before he strikes. Importantly, once you have a 6-star, this is going to turn the 2 damage to the enemy and 1 damage to the Nexus into 4 damage to an enemy, 3 damage to the Nexus. If you have no enemies to shoot at, that is 27 damage instead of 9. So yeah, you don't really need Whisper. So yeah, unfortunately, even though Jhin's going to be amazing, his Relic's not going to be all that good. So I wouldn't even bother with it. Alright, that is the information about the new patch. Obviously, the Rogues of Runeterra area is really interesting. I'll probably stream it. And just let me know what you guys think in the comments below. My name is Serafi, and I was thrilled to have all of you with me.